Welcome to the Hidden History series. In this episode we will discuss airships or dirigible balloons, which are a kind of aircraft which can navigate through the airspace under their own propulsion. The earliest recorded hot air balloon flight that included placing animal passengers on board was on the 19th of September 1783. The ornate looking Montgolfier hot air balloon was manufactured by the Montgolfier brothers. The flight lasted 8 minutes and was witnessed by the French Queen Marie Antoinette and an enthusiastic crowd of 130,000 people. The Montgolfier hot air balloon flew about 2 miles before landing safely. Only 2 months later, on the 15th of October 1783, the first crewed flight of the Montgolfier hot air balloon was launched. Then 2 years later, the French inventor called Jean-Pierre Francois Blanchard and the English physician called Dr. John Jeffreys flew from Dover to Calais on the 7th of January 1785. But how was this possible if the first steerable balloon was invented on the 24th of September 1852? Surely the flight across the English Channel must have needed to be controllable by using a steering mechanism. Between 1896 to 1897, over 50,000 American citizens across the United States claimed to have observed airships with spotlights which could not be identified. We must remember that reports of mystery airships are now seen as cultural predecessors to claims in the modern age of flying discs piloted by extraterrestrials. The late 19th century became the temporal marker for when the repurposing of the occult technology from the old world empire of Great Tartaria was used. Both the telephone and the automobile were invented during these years as well. Between the years of 1896 to 1897, there were many stories that were printed in papers around the sightings of these airships. During the 23rd of November 1896, a story originally reported by the San Francisco Chronicle was printed in the Minneapolis Journal with the headline of "All in the Air, a mysterious airship puzzles the people of California," and was also printed in the Boston Daily Journal with the headline of "Airship, a fact, a son of Maine has mastered the secret." But there were so many stories like this all over the United States of America. During the 17th of April 1897, in the city of Aurora in northeastern Texas, a metallic-looking airship suddenly crashed into a windmill. Inside the airship was a deceased pilot that was an extraterrestrial. In a story that was printed during the 25th of April 1897 in Houston in southeastern Texas, a metallic airship and 5 peculiar dressed men were seen by 3 witnesses. Apparently, the bizarre looking humans asserted they were all genetic descendants of the lost tribes of Israel and had learned the English language from the English North Pole expedition, which began on the 10th of May 1553, led by Sir Hugh Willoughby. On the 25th of March 1896, in Albion Weekly News, reported that a couple of witnesses from the city of Albion in South Michigan observed a metallic airship crash just 10 inches from where they were standing. The unique airship then suddenly disappeared, with a humanoid standing where the airship had been. Seemingly, the humanoid of the airship then showed the witness a small device which supposedly enabled the pilot to shrink the airship so he could store the vessel in his pockets. The The famous Italian polymath and painter called Leonardo da Vinci made plans for a macchina volante, or flying machine, in the 15th century, and there is evidence that suggests that airships are forms of aeronautic-based occult technology that has been concealed from human beings. If such kinds of aeronautic-based technology were truly revealed, human beings would have access to the boundless telluric electricity, or ether. The educators from Western science tell us that in Western alchemy there are only 4 elements, when in actuality we have 5 elements in this 3D holographic reality. And the 5th element is the ether of planet Earth. This is how the airships were able to obtain flight for such long periods of time, using the onboard capacitors and harnessing the potent telluric electricity from the ether. So this is most certainly technology from the Old World Empire, and it was erased because if humans had begun to use telluric electricity, the policymakers would not have been able to charge for it, and the hidden language of the elites had to be consistently kept away from humans. From 458 BC, the political basis of Great Tartaria was collectively founded after the collapse of the Scythian Empire, and previous to that the land of Hyperborea, which happened over a huge span of time. Much of the political and scientific basis of Tartaria, or Tartary, was founded on the 4th of October 1586. It was during this date the griffin flag of the Tartarian Emperor and the owl flag of the Nordic Tartarians and Great Tartaria were designed. Because the Nordic Tartarians were the holders of this advanced technology, they were able to construct metallic airships and use telluric electricity to levitate and propel their vessels. Great Tartaria eventually fragmented and was completely destroyed, just as its colonies around planet Earth were also obliterated. The civilization of Great Tartaria would continue to exist until the 30th of April 1894. However, after the 30th of December 1922, the remnants of Great Tartaria was then made into separate Soviet republics such as Tatarstan, which is now part of the Russian Federation, where the occult technology was taken and reconfigured for the inventors from the Industrial Age. The Tartarians defined each device with the word skyships or airships. Each of these devices were defined in the plural as Howie Galima, the Asma Galima, Havi Galima, Gok Gimlila. Because the Tartarians used the atmospheric electricity of the ether, their buildings absorbed it within huge ground floor or basement capacitors. Likewise, the airships had electrical capacitors on board that became and could be charged through the buildings. The Empire State Building is classed as the 8th wonder of the world due to its architectural wonder and building skill. This was once used as a docking point for airships. Because the airships of Great Tartaria were made from externally insulated but internally conductive metal framework, an electrical charge was transferred into the metal framework. Currents of electricity were then directionally used to lift and propel the airships of Great Tartaria. Whilst in flight, the metallic airships of Tartaria were continually able to optimally absorb telluric electricity from the atmosphere by the use of conductive antennae. Whether or not the Vimanas or traversers of Vedic India were connected with the airships of Great Tartaria cannot be currently ascertained. However, this does prove the occult technology we once had, and is very likely there was some kind of historical correlation. We must remember that the renowned director of the International Academy of Sanskrit Research, Gotham Ritapuran Ravikanta Joshua, also called G.R. Joshua, carried out scientific work at the facility in the city of Mysore in Karnataka in southwestern India concerning the Vimana or traverses. History is written by the victors, which was a statement created by the French philosopher from Paris called François-Marie Arouet, who many know as Voltaire. We need to also remember that it is the elites or those in privileged positions that write the historical narratives that are put into the coursework in schools, colleges, universities of the Western world. So we should always question the victors and the stories each of them convey, instead of simply believing everything we are presented with. Throughout vast geographic expanses of Great Tartaria, there were numerous towns and cities which continually absorbed the ever-present telluric electricity from the atmosphere, just as the airships continued to do so. For the Tartarians, such a telluric electricity-based lifestyle was truly kind of celestial heaven upon planet Earth. This meant the use of metallic airships ensured the need for transportation was always applicated for the Nordic Tartarians, because such individuals always intended to progressively maintain their own golden empire. Much of the aeronautic-based occult technology was seen as a threat to the controlling structure, so it wasn't until Charles Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, or Napoleon III, was given funds for the Great Army of the French Imperial Army of France in 1852. It was used by the European bankers of Switzerland until it ended on the 27th of October 1870 to ensure that aerial-based technology from Great Tartaria could be ascribed to inventors in mainland Europe as part of the suppression and historical revisionism. Because of this reason, the proficient inventor from Paris in north-central France, known as Henry Giffard, would be given the schematics for a uniquely designed airship that had been previously manufactured in Great Tartaria. When it comes to the conventionality of Western science, we are only presented with the fact that airships or dirigible balloons used hydrogen, but then this was transferred to helium, which is not flammable. However, the chemical element of helium also restricted flight altitudes due to it not having a potent enough lifting capacity. It was the rigid airship called the Zeppelin 129 or the LZ 129 Hindenburg was intentionally painted with a flammable coating and purposely destroyed. By doing this, a deception could be perpetuated, as the elites could then convey the idea that rigid airships or dirigible balloons were entirely unsafe. The reason they did this was because the occult technology from Tartaria had been used to develop and manufacture many of the airships, including the LZ-129 Hindenburg. So this meant that such kinds of airships were a constant reminder of this advanced technology needed to be suppressed, eradicated, and reset. The different kinds of airships were a popular means of transportation until coming up to World War II began on the 1st of September 1939, when there was a series of accidents, including the crash and burning of the Allon commune of the Oise department in northern France of the R101 airship that was part of the Imperial Airship Scheme in the United Kingdom of Great Britain on the 4th of October 1930. Additionally, the storm-related crash of the US Navy helium-filled rigid airships called the USS Akron ZRS-4 on the 4th of April 1933, and the crash of the USS Macon, the ZRS 5 on the 12th of February 1935 ensured that airships would not be used in a large scale capacity. Once the LZ-129 Hindenburg was destroyed on the 6th of May 1937 in the Manchester Township in New Jersey in northeastern United States, it ensured the elites and the secret societies had finally suppressed any lasting vestige of the aerial-based occult technology which had been derived from Great Tartaria. The unusual rigid airship or dirigible balloon called the Machina Voladora or flying machine, and the Californian Arrow airship, which the aeronautical engineer Augustus Royston Canabenchu had constructed, the Francois airship, and the airship called the Montana Meteor of the professional aeronautist known as Thomas Chalkley Benbow, were displayed at the St. Louis World's Fair, which was located in Missouri in the American Midwest in 1904. There were airships in the Jamestown Exposition in West Virginia in southeastern United States in 1907. The marvelous Lincoln Beechey airship was shown at the Clark Centennial Exposition in the city of Portland in Washington County in 1905. And there were other World's Fairs where these balloons were shown. The repurposing of the occult technology from Great Tartaria has grown extensively over the past 100 years, and there is no doubt we had occult technology in our not so distant past, and this technology would have created a much easier way of living. This kind of aeronautics based occult technology tapped into the ether and was able to harness the boundless telluric electricity from the atmosphere. But the reason why this occult technology has been suppressed is because if human beings discovered that there is a boundless ether resonating around us, the entire control structure could no longer be controlled. Thank you for watching the Hidden History series, everybody. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you soon.